Yo, what's going on, boys? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to another 2 video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a build for this final GM. We have finally made it to the final one, and this one's not going to be bad at all. It's going to be the Devil's Lair this week. So this build is going to be so you can always get that completion no matter what kind of teammates you run into in LFG. With whatever they're using, you're always going to get the completion. You're going to be able to deal with all the champions and also put out a ton of damage. So if that sounds like something that you're looking for, then this is going to be the perfect build for you. And let's just get into it. Now in this Grandmaster, you're going to run into both barriers and overloads. So let's start off with the weapons. And the first weapon that we're going to be taking a look at, and our main weapon that we're going to be using most of the strike, is going to be the Core of 1. How can I not pick this auto rifle? It is very popular, a lot of people have it, and it's a beast right now. It puts in so much damage, a ridiculous amount of damage, and with it being an auto rifle, it can be your weapon against overload champions, and you're gonna melt those overload champions. You usually just want to fire it like a normal auto rifle before they are stunned, and then once they're stunned, you let them have that wyvern blast. This weapon is gonna be fantastic and dealing pretty much with every enemy, whether it's dealing with ads, with dealing with champions, some of the bigger majors, the tank, the boss of the strike. Is going to be able to do tons of damage to all of them. And we're also going to have a couple of mods that are going to make it so we're always topped up on our special ammo, so we never run into any special ammo problems. Now for our kinetic slot, I'm going to recommend that you run a pulse rifle here so we can deal with those barriers. I tend to prefer pulse rifles with kinetic tremors, since I love kinetic tremors, I'm a big fan of it, but you can pretty much get away with using any pulse rifle that you like. We're mostly just going to use it for whenever we gotta deal with those barrier champions, or whenever we run out of ammo on our Core of 1, even though with all our mods, that's not really gonna happen too often. Now when dealing with barriers, I would definitely recommend that you always try to get the barrier to pop his barrier once, and then once you break it, you really let him have it with either your heavy or your special. That's when you really kill him. If you don't do that and you just go all in right away, there's a chance that he'll just be able to regen a lot of his health back when you're switching over to your pulse rifle. So that's why I kind of recommend that you pop that shield first before doing any real damage. But yeah, this is mostly just gonna be for the barrier. Not really gonna be doing much with this besides that. Now for the heavy, this is where we have the most flexibility, since rockets are just always good. There's never a bad time to have a rocket, and they do a ton of burst damage. So they're really good for dealing with champions specifically, since you have like small windows of damage. I would say that grenade launcher would also work, since you can also put a lot of damage out really quickly. Now moving on to the super, I'm going to recommend that you guys run the Silencing Scroll, and this is one of those GMs where you get a lot of value out of every single Silencing Scroll. You can like freeze entire waves of enemies, and then after that the Silencing Scroll will continue to like chase enemies around, and everything is like so close together that it can usually go through tons of enemies by freezing them and defeating them, and even stun champions or lockdown champions. That the Silencing Scroll is fantastic for this. Any place where you have a lot of enemies in a small area really makes the Silencing Scroll shine. So we have quite a few in this strike. We have where we hold the waves, we have the tank section, and even the final fight against the boss. All of those places are really good for the Silencing Scroll. But if the Silencing Scroll is not your thing, then you could also run the Tether. It pretty much accomplishes a pretty similar thing, just locking down an area and making everything easier to kill. And on top of everything, it also kind of stuns overload champions even. So that's gonna be another way to stun those overloads. Now for our grenade and our melee, we're gonna go for the double weakening combo. So we got the snare bomb as well as the magnetic grenade. They're both gonna weaken and put a debuff on targets. And this is pretty much what you wanna do when you run into a champion or a bigger enemy. Throw your smoke or your magnetic grenade at them, and then let them have the wyvern blast. And it's gonna do a lot, and I really do mean a lot of damage. So whether you have your grenade or your melee up, you're always gonna have a debuff. Now for our aspects, we got your Ren Stylist Executioner and also the Threat Spectre. Stylist Executioner is pretty amazing and lets you go invisible every time you defeat a target that's affected by a debuff. So whether we hit them with our grenade, with our melee, or even use our weapon if you have the catalyst that gives you these stabilizing rounds. But even if you don't have that, we're still gonna have a couple of the ways to go invisible, even without the destabilizing rounds. Invisibility used by itself can have a lot of different uses, so you always kind of want to have this. Now, for our other aspect, the Threat Spectre, this is gonna be for taking some aggro away from ourselves and our teammates. I feel like people don't give the Threat Spectre enough credit for PvE, but it actually takes aggro very well, especially from things like champions and from snipers. I feel like a lot of times in the GMs, a sniper may take somebody out, maybe just because they didn't see them or they got caught off guard. And with Threat Spectre, that happens less, because if Threat Spectre is up, a lot of times the enemies will focus it. Not all the time, you know, if you're like right next to an enemy, they're definitely gonna go for you instead of Threat Spectre. But if you put it like in an open area where a lot of the ads are seeing it, they're usually gonna go for that. So I actually kind of love the Threat Spectre. It takes the aggro away from you, your teammates, and overall it just kind of makes things a little bit safer, especially when taking on champions. Next up we have the fragments, and let's start with the faceted protection. Whenever we are surrounded by combatants, we're gonna be taking more damage. It is 15% at base, and whenever we hit Transcendence, it's gonna be 25%. This is gonna make us a little bit tankier in the GMs, and just make it so we survive things that otherwise we wouldn't. So I always kind of recommend the faceted protection for GMs. Just being a little tankier could definitely save your life. Next up, we're gonna have faceted purpose. Whenever you pick up Orb's power, we're gonna get either Frost Armor or an Overshield. And since we're gonna be making quite a bit of orbs, we're always gonna be taking advantage of Frost Armor over the Overshield, and they're both gonna give us a bit of extra damage reduction, so we can tank a bit more damage. After that, we're gonna have the Faceted Solitude. There's another way to put a debuff on something to go invisible, and also a way to make a dangerous enemy a little bit less dangerous. Because whenever we hit multiple precision hits, we're gonna be severing the target, meaning that they're gonna be doing less damage to us. So if we sever something like a champion, they're gonna be doing less damage to you, and they're just less likely to kill us. And that even creates a tango every time you defeat a severed target, so that's another nice little bonus. After that, we're gonna have the Faceted Dominance, and this is what gives our grenade the ability to apply weaken. And that's pretty much it. It just kind of gives our grenades weaken, and down itself is gonna be pretty good, so we can have even more debuffs. And lastly, we're gonna have the Faceted Balance. Whenever we rapidly defeat targets with either light or darkness energy, we get back melee energy or grenade energy. So it just kind of depends what we're getting kills with. Since we have mostly light damage with our weapons, we're mostly gonna get melee energy. But whenever we pop our super, we're also gonna be getting back tons of grenade energy, so we can get our grenade back faster. Now for your exotic armor, I recommend that you go with an exotic cloak with the Spirit of Galanor. It pretty much guarantees that you get 50% back to your super every time you throw the Silencing Scroll. It is not like something that you get back instantly. You pretty much have to wait for the super to end. So just make sure that you stay alive till your super ends, so you can get like half your super back. But as long as you're doing that, you're gonna have a lot of Silencing Scrolls that you're gonna be able to just throw it around every time you see a big group of enemies. Now, if you went with Tether, it is not as consistent with Tether. I wish it was more consistent with Tether. But if you don't really find it consistent enough, you could always switch out to the Orpheus rigs, and those are going to work better with Tether. But I would definitely say give the exotic class item a try first, and see how you like it. Now, moving on, let's take a look at the mods, and we're going to do this real quick. We're not going to spend too much time here. But for the helmet, we have Special Ammo Finder, Special Ammo Scout, and then a Void Siphon. That's just so we can keep our auto rifle topped off, so we can keep using it basically as our primary. For our gauntlets, we have Void Loader for our auto rifle again, Bolstering Detonation, and Momentum Transfer to reduce our cooldowns a little bit. For your chest piece, I recommend 2 arc resistances. There's so much arc damage in this strike, you definitely want resistance. And then there's also some solar damage. So I would say 2 arc and 1 solar is probably like the best setup. But if you feel like there's something that hits you more than arc, you could change that. But I would recommend that you keep it this way. After that, for the boots, we have Absolution, Recuperation. Absolution gives us back energy to all our abilities, while Recuperation gives us back health whenever we pick up an orb. And we also have Void Scavenger again for our auto rifle so we can keep it tough. And lastly, for our class item, we have special finisher. If we ever are in a situation where there's no special ammo, we can make special ammo ourselves with our armor charge. We also have reaper, so whenever we use our class ability, we can make an orb, and also bomber, so we can get some grenade energy every time we use our class ability. But those are the mods that we have here, and now let's move on to the actual artifact. Now here for the artifact, we definitely want Span the Abyss. It's gonna make us do some crazy damage with our auto rifle after we weaken something. We want Void Hegemony as well. After we kill that thing that we weakened, we get a bit of an overshield. Radiant Orbs is pretty good. Counter Energy is also really good. And then these two right here, you definitely want them. Sustained Fire is going to give us some damage resistance as we do damage with the auto rifle. And then targeting autoloader, well, autoloader weapon, as was give us some increased damage. So we're always basically going to have increased damage. And every once in a while, our auto rifle will just auto reload, which is pretty nice. And lastly, you definitely want to have overload auto rifle, so we can stun those overload. But anyways, with that, that's going to be it. That's pretty much everything that you want to run on your artifact. And now let's talk a little bit about the way that we play with this build. So this build is probably the most simple build that I've made. All you do is switch to your auto rifle and basically shoot everything with it. You definitely want to use shoot mostly on the auto rifle mode. You don't want to go into the wyvern mode too often. You know, the wyvern mode is fun, but my god, does it run through ammo really quickly. So you always want to kind of use it as a normal auto rifle, except when you're running to the big enemies. When you're running to the big enemies, you unload your magazine with the head fire and make them disappear. It's very straightforward kind of playstyle, but it really works. Another thing that I definitely want to tell you is that you want to spam your transcendence and your super as much as you can. As soon as you get your super and you see like a big group of ads, just throw it out there, so you're gonna get half of it back. And the tornado is amazing for building up darkness energy. You're pretty much always gonna get that transcendence ready after the super, so you could like go super, and then when the super runs out, you could transcend. And when the transcendence is running out, you'll probably have your super again, and you can just keep staggering them like that, and always pretty much be with something out there. And besides that, just remember to use your decoy. You know, whenever you see a bunch of enemies, make sure that you use it like in an open area, so it actually gets targeted by the enemies. Because sometimes I see some people use it behind cover, and that doesn't really do much. So you make sure that you use it out in the open, especially if you like stun a champion and then hit your decoy. That will pretty much guarantee that whenever that champion gets on stun, if it does even get to that point, it'll pretty much target the decoy. So you don't really have to get caught off guard. If you thought you were going to kill a champion but didn't, and then they start shooting at you, that just won't happen with your Threat Spectre. But I hope you guys enjoyed the build. Good luck. I'll leave a link in the description to it, like always. And if you do end up using it, make sure that you come back here and tell me what you guys thought of the build. So if this is the final GM of the season, congratulations if you're watching these videos every week, because that means that you have your Conqueror title. So congrats, and I hope that you get many more. But anyways, thank you all for watching today. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care everyone, have a good rest of your day. Peace.